Hello and welcome from my little space here in Vienna. My name is Luise. I'm a literature student and writer, and I also work in a library as a library assistant, so I'm not a full librarian, but I thought it might be nice to share some more insights and some interesting facts that I learned when I started working there. Most of that is not really a secret or like any kind of mystery, but some of it may be surprising for some of you who have never worked in that field. And just to give you an idea what I'm doing there first, like I said, I'm just a library assistant at the public library in Vienna. I also have done an internship at the university library, so I can compare these two a little bit. The maximum hours you can do as a library assistant here are 16 hours, and you help out at a lot of different parts of the libraries. What I was introduced to first was the front desk, where the people check out their books or bring them back. And this is one of the most social places. One of the most social places. There is also a different spot where you make the membership cards. That is a little bit more chilled because there's not that much happening. Like, it depends on the day, but usually it's a little bit calmer than when you work at the checkout desk. And then there are other areas where you are not in contact with anyone at all, like when you put the books back into the shelf. Sometimes you help out at the different colleges. So each area with the different genres is called college. I don't know why, but this is what we call it. And sometimes you just help them out. And this can vary from, putting books back or helping them in their office. Sometimes I'm allowed to look at the new books that come in and put the stamp in from the library, things like that, which is always something I really enjoy. And then there is also the sorting room where all the books that have been brought back need to be sorted to the correct college, which is one of the, most boring places in my personal opinion. For the first point, a little comparison between public library and university library. The public library is very different in the people that come and want to borrow something. So it can be anyone, from a child to a very old person. It also varies in what the people are interested in. Some come here to, borrow children's books. Other people need some scientific book for their paper, and someone else is reading a romance novel, So the people and their interests vary a lot. And this is the thing with university libraries, that it's mostly people from the university, students or professors who come to the library of the universities. So this is just a difference surrounding. The biggest difference for me is the communication with the people, because most students would not speak up to you. They are okay with whatever you tell them. And if you tell them, I'm really sorry, we don't have that book, it's not here, they don't get angry. So I've had very, very few situations where someone was kind of unfriendly or something. It's more like the professors who get a little bit demanding sometimes, because they probably know what's possible, or some of them also think everything should be possible for them because they are professors. But usually it was very nice and easygoing. But at the public library, I have a lot of situations with people that are just extremely rude. And this brings me to the second point. People have the audacity sometimes. I mean, for anyone who works in retail, you know that obviously, but I'm still sometimes so surprised by how rude people can be, especially for me as a library assistant. I always tell them, I'm sorry, I'm only a library assistant. There are certain things that I'm simply not allowed to do, and I also can't do them because I didn't learn it or the system doesn't allow it to me. And they don't understand that. And you can tell it to them 50 times and they repeat over and over again, but this is what I want. And I'm like, yeah, great. And I would help you if I could, but I can't. Once there was a woman, she drove us crazy, and not only me, but she came there and it was about a book that was damaged. And this is what would be my next point, that when you bring back a book that is damaged, sometimes you have to replace it. And this can cause a lot of problems because a lot of people are like, well, but I didn't do it, which I totally understand. And it was the same situation with this woman, and she got so mad. She really started shouting at me, and I told her over and over again that it is not my decision if she has to replace that book or not, because I'm not allowed to make this decision. Then she ended up with saying things like, oh, one day when we're all in front of God, he's gonna judge us, and things like that. And I was like, what? what? Let me just do my job. The next point is that the books are extremely dirty, and you wouldn't, or at least it wasn't in my mind, that after a full shift of putting books back into different places, my hands are really dirty. So when I first washed them, the water was a little bit brown, and I was really surprised, like, wow. But I mean, it actually makes sense. So many different people touch them. It doesn't come from just touching one book, but after a full shift, it's really gross sometimes. And the next point is, which is also sometimes a bit gross, that the books start to take on the smells of the people who borrow them. Sometimes when people bring books back, they smell of smoke. Smoke is very often very intense. Also, like, body odor, like sweat and stuff like that. Another thing is food. Very intense smelling food also gets sucked up by the books, and then they bring them back and I'm like, whoa, what is this smell? And it's the books. Sometimes it's also pleasant smells like perfume or something, but usually more on the not so nice side. We often find very interesting things in the books, so people forget all kind of things in there. It is surprising what people use as bookmarks or what simply ends up in a book. I don't know how. One time I had like a little tube of moisturizer in a book. It was probably this size and this fat, and I'm like, how were you not able to see it? Because there are two different ways to bring the books back. You can either do it at the counter where we check the books immediately, so I would have seen it, or you bring them back at a machine and then you just put it in a box and then we check them afterwards. That's usually when very odd things turn up in books. There was also, I think a colleague told me once that there was a slice of salami in one of the books, which is really disgusting. So food is another thing where I think when people put the books in their backpack and they also have food in there and then, gets a little mixed in there. Sometimes it's very personal things with like personal notes, postcards, theater tickets, things like that, but it's always kind of interesting. Also photos or something. We do save some of the things where we think like maybe someone would come back and ask if we found anything. And there was also an exhibition of all the different bookmarks that we found in books at the library. I was so surprised when I started working there, and when I got really sore muscles from one of my first shifts where I had to put the books back into the shelves, because it's really exhausting and the books are heavy. Sometimes one shelf is completely full and then you have to do a little bit of, reorganizing, and you move around a lot of books and you go up and down, like from the bottom shelf to the top shelf. A very cool thing about the library is that you can not only borrow books. There is one branch library somewhere else, because I think in each district there's one public library, and I think there is one branch where you can just borrow items like for craft work, like a sewing machine or tools for all kinds of things, and that is pretty cool. And at the public library at the main building you can also borrow a record player, records, and there is a little room with a piano, with an e-piano, where you can play with headphones. So if you don't have a piano at home and you want to practice, you can go to the public library, and that is very cool. And I think it makes this place so much more inclusive, and obviously it's also a place to study. I go there quite often. I do have to say that the Viennese public libraries are not super aesthetically pleasing. I also think that the main library has some downsides, like architectural wise. It is directly in the middle of one of the busiest streets in Vienna, so you can hear the traffic and also the subway going underneath. All in all, I really enjoy working there. The sad thing is that the contract for assistants only goes for 10 months and then you can reapply, but it will take a little bit of time and you need like a break of 2 months in between. And I don't know if I'm able to go back there afterwards, but I haven't figured that out. At the moment, I'm still at the library. I'm really enjoying it. There is maybe one thing that makes me really annoyed. It's when people come and they just throw the books on the counter without saying anything, And they just assume that you can read their mind and know what they want. And, you know, there are lots of things that they could want. They could bring them back. They could want to borrow them or like renew them. There are lots of options. And this is really something that happens so often, that they don't greet you, they don't say thank you. And this is something that I find really sad and makes me really mad. And sometimes I'm like, you're welcome. And they don't even look you in the eye, other than some really difficult social situations, especially because being social is not my favorite thing. But here at the library, I'm kind of managing, and I'm also enjoying it sometimes. Because I love the surrounding. And sometimes I would love to have little conversations about the books that someone is borrowing, which happens sometimes, but yeah, most of the people aren't really open, and they just take the books and run away real quick because they're stressed and because life is so hard and serious. That's probably a thing of the Austrian people that like to be grumpy. I don't know. Last but not least, people are always so surprised, and I love seeing their faces when they put the books on the counter. We don't have to scan the books one by one, but there is a little field where you can place them, several books in a stack, and then underneath there is a scanner that can scan them like all at once. And the people are always so confused, and they're like, "What? But you didn't scan them." And I'm like, yeah, there is a computer or like a scanner underneath. And it's like magic, even though it really isn't, but it feels like it. And people are so surprised, and always makes me laugh because it's just so sweet. Last but not least, the library sells merchandise by the Viennese, and I'm not sure how to say this in English, but like the funeral company, I don't know, the people who organize funerals, and they have merchandise, and it's so funny. It's a little bit morbid, but in a very good way. And I'm going to show you one of their cotton bags. And sometimes people ask, do you have a bag or anything? And we do have like plastic bags, but I also of course show them the cotton bag, and when they see it, their reaction is priceless. Some of them are like, oh wow, this is so cool, and others are like, oh my god. And they are really, like, maybe even a little bit offended by it. I'm gonna show you, hold on. This is the bag, and it is in German. It says, ich lese bis ich verwese, and it rhymes, so it's quite funny. But in English, it doesn't sound that great. It basically means I'm reading until I decay. And yeah, it's just really funny. I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions about the library and about the work that I do there, just pop them in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. It is time to finish my tea and actually go to the library to work. I have a shift later. And yeah, I hope you're doing fine, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.